Hi, Matt here for the Turning Gate, and we're looking at the new Galleria add-on for Backlight, which allows you to create attractive slideshows like the one you see right now. When I mouse over this image, you can see that it is the slideshow, and these nice controls slide into place. We've got arrow buttons that you can use to navigate, as well as an image counter, a play button, and a full screen button. And then beneath the slideshow stage, we have a caption for the current image. So it's fairly minimalistic by default, but we can jazz it up a little bit using Backlight's designer and the array of personalization options included in the add-on. So I'm going to start here in the slideshow stage section, and I'm going to go ahead and set a black background and a fairly large negative space value just because I want to make sure that it's visible in this tiny web video. So that puts a nice black frame around the slideshow. And the next thing I'm going to do before I get into these other sliders is just slide down to the playback options, and I'm going to turn image crop off. What this does is, right now it's cropped, and so it blows the image up to fill the entirety of the slideshow stage. But if I turn the crop off, then instead it ensures that the image displays within the slideshow in its entirety without being cropped. So back up in the stage controls, we have aspect ratio. So it's 16:9 at default, but I'm going to set this to 2:1. We also have a separate set of sliders for the aspect ratio at mobile display sizes, and that's any display smaller than 736 pixels wide. And I'm going to show you why this is important. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure they're the same. So they're both 2:1. And so that gives me a wide slideshow that is not especially tall. So this is really nice and attractive on desktop, but when I go to a mobile, say I'm looking at it on an iPhone 8 Plus, you can see it's not very big. In fact, it's very, very short on the vertical. And so if I were looking at a portrait orientation image, for example, it would almost be like looking at a thumbnail. And so that's the reason we have a separate set of aspect ratio sliders, is because maybe we want the 2:1 on desktop, but when we're at mobile, we want something a little more friendly for that small display size. So by default, it's 1:1, and that gives you on phones a nice square slideshow. And then, images are much larger in here, and the vertical images, the portrait orientation images, are going to get sort of equal real estate for display as compared to their landscape-oriented counterparts. So that's a really nice feature. Moving down into the slideshow controls section, you can customize the arrows. For example, if I want to give the arrows a background so that they're easier to see. Now I've got white arrows on red squares. I can also take the controls and put them outside the stage. By default, they overlay the image, but we can put them above it, and I'm going to go ahead and give them a red background as well, just to make it easier to see. So, and when they're on the outside, they don't fade away like they do when they're overlays. You can turn off features you don't want. So if you don't need the play button or the full screen button or the image counter, you can turn those all off right here. The next section is for thumbnails, and we've got a bunch of different options here. So by default, they are disabled, but you can also display them in a carousel, and that will put them in a nice row beneath the slideshow. And you can see, you can click on them and bring up the image that you want. And the thumbnails are little cropped squares. So I can actually turn the cropping off if I want to show the complete image as a thumbnail. They're still relatively small, but now they have their, the full aspect ratio for the image. We have the palette. Turn the crop back on. And that puts a button in the control bar. So when we click that, it brings the thumbnails up in a window. This is scrollable. So if you've got a lot of thumbnails, you can scroll through them. You choose the one you want to see, and it loads it into the slideshow. And then for more minimalistic designs, or if you're using smaller collections of images in particular, you can just run with dots. And this is similar to the thumbnail carousel, except instead of image thumbnails, you get these dot indicators that you can click on. Or as you navigate through the images, the dot will follow along to show you your progress. So I'm going to put that back on carousel for now. I'm going to turn the image crop back on because I want to show you that we have separate crop controls for the inline sort of standard view and the full screen view. So when right now image crop is on, image crop in full screen is off. So when I go to full screen, I can see the entire image. You can also turn on autoplay if you want the slideshow to play by default when the page is loaded, and you can change the playback speed. The last section of controls is image info, and this is for controlling the captions and titles. So you can customize the metadata from which that information is drawn. You can change the alignment, and you've got this line down here beneath the caption to separate it from the page text. You can either get rid of that by setting this to 0, or you can increase it if you so desire. So I'm going to make it 12 to match the negative space around our slideshow, and I'm going to give it a red background and white text. So the next thing that we have are overlay controls. And so this is actually for two different scenarios. The first thing, regardless what you have set, when you go into the full screen, because by default the caption is down here underneath, when you go into full screen, the caption is gone. Instead, we get this indicator here, and when we up in the upper right is where the mouse is going, in case you can't see. And when I click on that, it shows me the caption, which will update as I move through the images. So this is the overlay. As you can see, it's red with white text, just like it was before, but maybe when I'm overlaying, I want it to be different. So that's why we have separate background and foreground color pickers for the overlay. So maybe when it's overlaid, I want it to be on a 35% opacity black with white text. And then maybe I don't want it underneath. Maybe I want it overlaid all the time. I can turn that on. And I can have the thumbnails opened up, or not thumbnails, the captions opened up by default. So with that setting, now the captions are here, overlaid on the stage. Now, even with this set to overlay though, because when we go into the mobile view, we have a limited space to work with, looking at this on a phone will still drop them back beneath the slideshow. So you want to make sure that you do customize this so that it looks the way you want when you're on a phone. And in case you don't like the indicator floating here over the image, we can actually go ahead and integrate that button into the control line as well. So that will put it up here next to the full screen button. So that's the Galleria slideshow. I've just got one more thing I want to show you, and this is pretty cool. So if I go back up to the top, I can change to a different page template. So I'm going to choose a full screen template. And I've set this up ahead of time using steps that you can find on our documentation section on our website. So, the header is gone, the navigation is gone. There's not even a button to use the sidebar navigation. Like, it's completely gone. And what I'm going to do is, in slideshow stage, I'm going to set the target. I'm going to change that from inline to expanded. And that will cause the slideshow to take up the entirety of the browser window. Now, if I want to be able to, access the rest of the website, I now have an option for a back or close button down here in the controls. So I'm going to turn that on. And over in the upper left hand, you can see that I now have this X button. So if I were to click that, it would take me back to the album set in which this album is a part. So, you're in the album set, you click into this album, you navigate through images, You hit that X, you go back to the album set, you choose a new album. So if you want to do the full screen album, and let me turn the image crop off, that actually makes it a lot nicer. If you want to do a full screen album, you can now click into the album, have your images full screen, really big, and then use that back button as an exit. So that is the Galleria slideshow. And of course, on a phone, you can swipe left and right to get through the images. I hope you like it. It's a great new option for Backlight users, and I really hope you all are as excited to use it as I am to release it. Thanks for watching the video, and you all have a fantastic day.